Black Widow was supposed to hit theaters today, but alas, it is not. So as we wait for the MCU to finally return, Kevin Feige already built in a huge waiting period, and now it's even longer. Some of you have been asking me in this interim to update my rankings of the 23 films that Feige and Disney have released so far. 23! You might want to pause this video and go get yourself a snack. Now, usually when I rank movies, I factor in not just my personal opinion, but also the box office, as well as franchise and cultural importance. That's why sometimes you guys are like, but Grace, you said this about this movie. Well, that was my personal opinion, but that's only a part of my overall analysis. But because I've ranked the MCU films beforehand, I wanted this list to look a little different. So, for fun, it's going to be just my personal opinion, again, on all 23 films. And please, share your own personal opinion about those films and how you'd rank them down below. I know you have some thoughts. All right, so, number 23, The Incredible Hulk. Now, this is at the bottom because it's not really a part of the MCU. I mean, they reference the soda, which is fun, but it's not part of the MCU. It doesn't even have the same actor. Edward Norton, of course, was, well, you know, it's interesting. A lot of times we hear the phrase creative differences, and I think The Incredible Hulk is a great example of why maybe you shouldn't die on a hill when you think about how much further you could go if you didn't, right? Edward Norton was like, no, I want to do it this way. And then he got fired, and now Mark Ruffalo has a wonderful resurgence with his career. He had kind of the same problems that Edward Norton did. He was a little too niche, a little too awards friendly. And now he's going around making the same films that nobody watches. But he's in the Marvel movies too, and no one watches Edward. No, Edward Norton is just spinning his wheels. So I think he should have just taken Kevin Feige's notes and scratched his creative itch on other films. Right? And he was a very good banner, by the way. A very good banner. Although so is Mark Ruffalo. Thor: The Dark World. You know it's awful. It's awful. I personally, I only put Incredible Hulk behind it because it's not even part of the MCU. Patty Jenkins sure dodged a bullet. That's where I guess that was worth, splitting over creative differences. Oh, it was so bad. Remember the Game of Thrones director took it over and everyone was like, oh, this is the beginning of his career. It was the end of his career. Oh, it was so bad. As I've told you before, I talked some people into going to that movie and I had to apologize to them profusely when the movie was done. It's just really bad. Next, Iron Man 3. It pains me to put a Tony Stark adventure so low down on my list, but it's just too 90s. It seems you can't teach an old dog new tricks if that dog's name is Shane Black. And Shane Black is a Hollywood legend, but his refusal to evolve to fit, the tastes of the times, I think really, he was going to have a comeback there for a hot minute, longer than a hot minute, but it didn't work out, and it's his own fault. It's like Christmas in a summer movie, although, Shazam did the same thing, and I think maybe to some degree suffered a little bit for the same reason. There's the villain fake out, with the Mandarin. Then Guy Pearce was a crazy, silly villain. And then, of course, they rescue the president. You're like, what's the president doing in a Marvel movie? There hasn't been a president in a Marvel movie since. There's been the Wakandan government and stuff like that. But it was just it didn't work with the Marvel brand. So that film is a hot mess. I still enjoy parts of it, though, because I do love Tony Stark. His house was so beautiful. They killed his house! All right. Now, I think it's funny that a lot of people complain about Wonder Woman's third act, when a lot of these movies in Marvel land have horrible third acts. And that would include every single first movie for the first Trinity, because obviously they're setting up a new Trinity. Who would be? It's Captain Marvel and Black Panther for sure, but I'm wondering who the third person is. I'm thinking Doctor Strange. All right, so anyway, Captain America, the First Avenger, that movie is when a large chunk of your movie is a montage, your movie has problems. That movie was so bad that Hugo Weaving was like, I'm never coming back, even though I am playing one of the most crucial Marvel villains of all time, the Red Skull. Although his replacement did a fine job, so that's bad when you're replaced and everybody's fine with it. Thor, the first Thor, it had fun moments. Kat Dennings is very funny. When he throws his beer down or mug down, he says, I'll have another. That's great stuff. But, it's not amazing. And then the first Iron Man also has fabulous moments. It kicked off the whole MCU. But, the whole Jeff Bridges thing, then it's just two versions of the same character fighting each other at the end. Black Panther had the same problem, just a little bit too, you know. But yeah, I mean, all those movies, they're fine. They got the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, but I don't think they quite hold up. Next, Avengers Age of Ultron. I mean, James Spader was inspired casting, and it was so great when they had that first teaser trailer, remember? And they did I've Got No Strings, and it was a Disney reference, which made it even funnier because, of course, Marvel is owned by Disney, and it was just perfect. And then, you know, it never materialized, that promise that we got from the ad campaign. Oh, remember that amazing opening shot, too, where all the Avengers were in slow motion together, and you were like, that's beautiful! So, I mean, it's not a horrible movie, but it's the weakest Avengers film by far. I did like when Cap lifted Thor's hammer just a little bit, which the Russo brothers recently revealed. He couldn't fully lift it at that point because he felt guilt over what happened with Tony's parents. I think he knew about it at that point, maybe. But also, of course, his guilt over what happened to Bucky. So only once those burdens were lifted from his shoulders was he able to lift it so amazingly in Endgame. And that makes sense. I think that's actually quite nice. I would love for that to be hinted at a little bit in a movie. And I think what the MCU is now, they would start to hint at that. And they wouldn't have to just be like, you don't know it, and it would never occur to you. But let me tell you something that we, for some reason, didn't utilize. But I think that the MCU has fixed that error now. But also, what they did to Black Widow in this movie is horrible, from the way her character is treated to even how she looks. She looked not good. The bad wig, it was just bad. And then also, Quicksilver was fabulous, and then they decided to kill him for, like, no reason. It was stupid. All right, next, Ant-Man. This movie solely exists on the genius of casting Paul Rudd in the role. I mean, Edgar Wright had to go, also on creative differences, and he still hasn't totally recovered. Another instance of, maybe you should have just gone with it. Because I do not like Peyton Reed as the director. I think it would, I mean, he's fine, he gets the job done, but like he's totally like an extension of just the studio. He doesn't really, I think, bring anything to the table himself. But also Michael Douglas, to get Michael Douglas to do a superhero movie, I mean, that's phenomenal. That's great. Casting like that opened the door to some of the great casting that we're getting today. So Ant-Man goes there. Then right after that is Ant-Man and the Wasp, which has a lot of the same problems, but also a lot of the same positives, like Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas. And then they added fantastic female equivalents, upping Evangeline Lilly's role, making her the Wasp finally, with some very cool action that they unfortunately put in the trailer. So when you got to the movie, you were like, there's nothing else? And they were like, yep, haha, sucker, you paid for it. And then Michelle Pfeiffer, the iconic Catwoman, joining the MCU as Janet Van Dyne, an iconic character, the very first leader of the Avengers. So wonderful, but then they don't do anything with her. So it's unfortunate that they're both wasted. And I think that ironically, the film is too small in its scope. Next up, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I still feel this film is too silly, and I don't like its viewpoint on women. I know some of you might be like, oh, barf, but it's important to me as a woman, and I just don't like the attitude towards women in that movie. I mean, look how, Gamora is supposed to be the greatest warrior in the galaxy, and she doesn't do anything. But I do look back at it more fondly now because I really liked Volume 2, which you'll see in a moment on my list. We're about to get to it. And I also enjoy the ride. So, Guardians of the Galaxy, while I don't love the first film, I like what it brings to the MCU overall. So, I appreciate it, I like it more than when I first saw it. Iron Man 2. I like it. I think it's good. This is like the Batman Returns of the MCU. A film I also like, by the way. I think it was really fun. Sam Rockwell, how can you not love him in that movie with all the tanner on his hands? That's hilarious. Takes a brave man to have tanner on your hands when you're wearing all white. I like the development of the relationship between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. I thought that was really well done. Gwyneth Paltrow, a wonderful His Girl Friday in a superhero movie. I just really like what they did with her character. And it was, came to fruition at Endgame. Well, don't worry, we'll talk about Endgame. But I just thought, I really liked what was done here. And I liked seeing Tony Stark's lifestyle, both the good and the bad. And I thought they did a nice job introducing Black Widow. And then they had that fun end credits sequence. I thought Iron Man 2 was excellent. I thought that's when the MCU started to really, start to pick up the pace and head toward this very bright future. Then next, the original Avengers. It's tough to top the magic of the first successful team-up movie. As I said when I first saw that film, I was like, this is what it's like to read a comic book. And specifically, a Marvel comic book. They really captured that feel. Also, although, when you look back, the costumes are horrible. They've come a long way. in Hollywood's ability to make superhero costumes. Like, they look so bad. Then next, I would actually put Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I'm as shocked as you that I would rank that above the first Avengers. And I know a lot of you don't care for this movie either, but I really liked it. I think Mantis is a wonderful character. You know, for all the things that James Gunn did wrong with female characters in the first movie, I thought he made up for it a lot with the second film. And then also, I never in a million years would have dreamt that I would cry for Yondu. But I did cry for Yondu. I thought his funeral was beautiful. I came to really like Sean Gunn, his performance in person, because, you know, of course he does the motion capture for Rocket. I just liked this movie. I thought it was I really enjoyed it. All right, now we're entering the top 10. All right, so first off, number 10, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Number 10, what could be above it? You'll see. And I love this movie. These are all, now we're getting to movies that are all, I think, phenomenal. All right, so Captain America, Winter Soldier. Enter the Russo brothers, a relationship where you're gonna do great things together with Kevin Feige, guys. Cap and Natasha, done right. The Russo brothers really got both those characters. It was wonderful to see. Bucky, done right. I thought Sebastian Stan was ridiculous in the first Avenger. I was like, that's Bucky? And when he fell to his death, I knew he was coming back, so I was like, whatever. And I thought that whole thing was wasted character development. But Bucky as Winter Soldier just became, I think, an incredible character with amazing action sequences that have become his hallmark. Bucky's my dad's favorite character because he loves his action sequences. We all know that when Bucky shows up, things are going to get awesome. Falcon, also, you know, for everything that people say about Bucky and Steve's relationship, I think Sam and Steve have, I think, a stronger, more interesting and realistic relationship. That's why I think there's always the romance vibes between Bucky and Steve, because there's that tumultuousness, that love-hate thing that you have, you know, when there's a sexual attraction. I'm sorry, but, you know, Sam and Steve, that's a true romance. I love it. And that's why I'm very excited, by the way, for the Disney Plus show. I'm excited to see Sam and Bucky step up to the plate themselves. And I also thought this is where Marvel began to mix in different genres. And it's become, I think, the new Marvel formula. They don't do it every time, but it's when Marvel movies are the most successful. And also, this was the first time that Marvel movies really got serious. And I think that you need to have serious elements for fans to take your movie seriously. And I think also when they introduce serious elements, that's also when the MCU shines the most. They don't have to go full DC. They can still have the fun element, which they do, but I'd say it's become like maybe a 60, I think it's best when it's a 60-40 split, 60 fun, 40 serious, but sometimes Marvel blinks and goes like 30-70. All right, next up, Avengers Infinity War. I know some of you feel this is the best Marvel movie, but you're crazy. It's not. I mean, it wastes half the team. You're like, why are Steve and Natasha and Sam in hiding? And like, they're not really in hiding. And then Natasha's like, I dyed my hair blonde and my eyebrows blonde, but we're never going to talk about it. And you're like, okay, I think they're going to try and explain it away with the Black Widow movie. But you shouldn't have had to explain it away with another movie years later. And also, wasting Wakanda. It comes after Black Panther, and they're like, clearly Marvel did not expect Black Panther to be as successful as it was. Because you're like, oh, wait a minute, I thought we were also excited to get a double dose of Wakanda, and then we kind of really didn't. But the ending of Infinity, I guess all these movies aren't perfect. But the reason I put Avengers Infinity War above Captain America Winter Soldier is the ending, when everyone faded away and like big names. I'll never forget the gasp when Black Panther faded away after his movie had just made $1 billion. I was like, oh my God, it was amazing. It was an incredible experience. And I think Marvel movies are also becoming experiences, which movie theaters I'm sure love. They're like, thank you. And that's also, I think, what helps a lot of these movies. Next up, Captain Marvel. I'm sorry, but I have to say, as a female viewer, this movie simply does mean more to me. And that's, I think, representation is important. And I think any movie that has representation for you, I'm sure you would put pretty high up. It just does make a difference. Now, I find it fascinating that Carol is the anti-Wonder Woman, goddess versus a regular person. And she's, ironically, considering she's a space-based hero, very down-to-earth. And also, I think her representation is just so important. Like, for instance, Disney recently released their own face masks, as I predicted they would. And they have a Marvel batch, and they have one that has multiple characters on it. And the only female character to make the group is Captain Marvel. And because she's so powerful, she's the only Scarlet Witch is obviously incredibly powerful, but she hasn't leveled up just yet. And she doesn't have the visual uniform that Captain Marvel does. In Captain Marvel, she's ridiculously powerful. I have to say, when she showed up in Avengers Endgame and she broke through the atmosphere like at a sonic pace and crashed through Thanos' ship, I had tears in my eyes. Again, representation matters. But I do think the film is good. To me, I think it gets better with each viewing. Although I will say, 100%, Carol is not a leader, and that is painfully obvious from her movie. So she can't lead the Avengers because she's not a leader. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I think it's great. If she were a leader, it would make her a Mary Sue. Carol Danvers is not a Mary Sue. She messes up all the time. She has no interest in leading. I think that's wonderful. Doctor Strange is next. I never thought this movie would work. And I thought it was just an Inception ripoff from the trailers, which is exactly what it did look like. But they had a bunch of super trippy elements they were saving for the movie. And those, to me, made the movie. I also like that his cape is like carpet from Aladdin. That's hilarious. And of course, it stars Benedict Cumberbatch, who's fantastic. Scott Derrickson did a very good job creating this world, and it'll be interesting to see where Sam Raimi takes it. Because Sam Raimi has a more silly perspective, which actually fits better with Marvel, but I don't know how it works with Benedict Cumberbatch in the world that Scott Derrickson first introduced. Although, speaking of Infinity War, the way that leveled up Doctor Strange's powers, which I also will never forget seeing for the first time in a theater, and the audience reaction, I'm very excited to see where Doctor Strange goes next. So I not only love this movie, but I think that the Doctor Strange films overall have tremendous potential. Next, you can see I do factor in a little bit franchise importance because it matters to me. I love thinking about this stuff, and I think Doctor Strange is an exciting movie, not just because what you're seeing on screen, but because you start to get an idea of what's coming next. Also, the scene where Tilda Swinton says goodbye on the balcony of the hospital, I thought that was stunning. And also what she said to Doctor Strange, it's not always about you. I think everybody needs to hear that. Including myself, by the way. That's very important advice. I'm not just saying it's advice for you. Spider-Man Homecoming. As I said when I reviewed this movie, it's truly a reflection of modern-day society. And that's so great to see in a movie. I think it's great. And of course, it's amazing casting. Tom Holland and Zendaya are extremely well cast, and I think they do a lot to elevate Spider-Man films. Tony Stark development, having him as a stand-in for Uncle Ben, I like it a lot. I think it's great. I think you don't want to revisit the Uncle Ben story, but it gives Peter Parker it gives both of them actually a very tragic but touching storyline. I love the Tony Stark and Peter Parker dynamic. And also Aunt May in the mix too. That stuff's all great. Happy. I think it worked out very well. He does kind of become Iron Spider-Man, but I love Spider-Man, so I love Iron Man, and I do like this version of Spider-Man, so I'm okay with it. I do want to get eventually to an adult Spider-Man. That's why I like Into the Spider-Verse so much, but I'm patient. I'll wait. And then also, I thought this movie had an incredibly clever reimagining of the Vulture. You know, a scrapyard guy who starts a new business, picking over the remains of, superhero battles to make stuff for criminals. It's just fantastic. And of course, you can't go wrong with Michael Keaton, and they didn't. Then, next up, Spider-Man Far From Home, for many of the same reasons. Also, just the way they leveled up Vulture, they leveled up Mysterio. The element of fake news, that's ripped from today's headlines and very smartly applied to a classic villain. The best turning point, I think one of the best turning points I've ever seen in a movie is the bar, where it's revealed what's really going on with Mysterio. He even has the green suit on underneath. That's amazing. That's just so incredible. And they did such a good job keeping it from everybody. It was a genuine surprise. We thought he was lying about alternate realities, but we never guessed it. And to bring back that actor from the first Iron Man and to insert Jake Gyllenhaal into that sequence from Civil War when Tony was doing the therapy with his parents, the digital therapy. It was an amazing reveal. It was so good. And then also the Mysterio sequence right out of the comics, but updated with drones. Again, Mysterio you think would be a lame character, but they made it, that's amazing. When Hollywood can take a character where you're like, what are you going to do with that guy? And then you go, oh, that's fantastic. And also, speaking of updating things, we all loved Tony Stark's sunglasses beforehand, but Edith made them even cooler. Those were very clever sequences with Peter learning how to use that. And then also, of course, ended up being the focal point of the movie. Very organic. Loved it. Love it. I'm a little worried about Tom Holland and Zendaya going forward. I don't want to see Zendaya's MJ just fall into the girlfriend role. I think that's very boring and not exciting. I hope they figure out something to do with MJ because I love her so much, especially as played by Zendaya. Then Thor Ragnarok. I love this movie. It gives so many memes and gifts to us. It's fabulous. Total 180 for the character. And, just as an example of how well this turned out, he's getting a 4th movie. Cate Blanchett, her joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and she was so amazing as Hela. When is she coming back? It's so annoying. You're like, you better not have just done 1 movie. But that was amazing. So good. And she, again, walking right off the comic book page. It was incredible. And it's rare to see the DNA of a writer-director, Taika Waititi, so infused with not just a film, but somebody else's property. Taika Waititi didn't come up with Thor, but they let him run with it, and it worked out fantastic. The problem of Thor was solved. Fantasy didn't work for the character. Going the Game of Thrones route did not work. But putting him kind of in the MCU cosmic has worked, I think, incredibly well. And I love him. I love his relationship with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's great. I think it makes Star-Lord a little bit redundant, but that's Star-Lord's problem. I think it's great for Thor. Next up, Captain America Civil War. Not a fun movie to watch, but that's part of its genius. The argument between Cap and Steve is so strong that it went out of the movie and divided the fandom. Remember, we were all like, I'm Team Cap, I'm Team Iron Man, and we really were, and we really disliked the other side. I came to love Cap with Endgame, but for a while there, and I still kind of have a little leftover feelings about that. I was like, Cap, you're a problem. I was solidly on Team Iron Man. And that was really amazing to see. And then they had the guts not to resolve the dispute at the end of the movie and have it carry on going forward. That was wonderful. I mean, it's incredible to have a piece of fictional entertainment have that kind of an emotional reaction from viewers. As I said, it wasn't fun to watch because when it's revealed what happened to Tony's parents, that was brutal. I mean, you're watching, again, superheroes, and you're like, wow, like you felt that betrayal. I think on both sides even, and that's incredible. Also, more great Bucky action sequences, always so good. And then when he and Captain America teamed up to fight Iron Man, I'm still not totally over what they did to him. All right, and when Iron Man yelled after Cap and he said, you're not fit to carry that shield because my dad made it for you, and then Cap threw it down like it was trash. I mean, I now understand that Cap did feel still guilty and was upset about it, but that was powerful stuff. That was amazing. Oh, I get chills still thinking about it. All right, next, Black Panther. Now, as I said when the movie came out, it's the evolution of roots. And I know some of you at the time didn't agree with that, but I hope that you now understand what I'm talking about. It is incredible what that movie has been able to do, to shift the viewpoint of an entire culture, of the Black community, from backwards about what was done to them to forwards about what they can do. And not just how the community sees itself, but how everyone sees the community. Wakanda is treated like a real place. Again, what these movies are able to accomplish with the fandom is incredible. I even think of Wakanda sometimes as a real place. I'm hoping that they build one at the Animal Kingdom. I really want to go there. I think it's a shining city on a hill, and I think that's just so wonderful for everyone involved. I think Black Panther is good for society. Isn't that amazing? It has a fantastic cast, fantastic world building, and a really powerful message. When so many people, talk about a disagreement, when so many people agree with Killmonger, or at least see where he's coming from, and then the ending when they go to the projects, it's a really good movie. Black Panther realized its cultural significance and didn't shy away from it. It leaned into it. And that's thanks to Ryan Coogler, who I think is an incredibly talented filmmaker. I think he's as effective as Taika Waititi in terms of just infusing a project with his essence, but they're so different. But because Ryan Coogler, I think, Taika Waititi's very political too with Jojo Rabbit, but he has not so far brought that to his Thor movies. And then finally, of course, the #1 Marvel movie is Avengers Endgame. To me, it's a perfect film. I haven't put it in my top 3 films of all time yet. I can't imagine having 2 superhero movies in there. I just can't. But I really love this movie. It takes real risks for the first time in the MCU. It has tremendous audience payoffs, like only a 10-year franchise can do, that didn't have any stops and starts. Other franchises have lasted as long, but they've taken huge breaks, or they've decided to reboot or do soft reboots. Avengers Endgame is the culmination of a decade of storytelling, robust storytelling, and it was amazing. It was so full of story, because also it was over 3 hours, so you got a lot of bang for your buck. So you had a ton of story, so many characters got to shine. I still can see Ant-Man shrinking to survive the blast, when he's at first looking out the window so happy that things have turned around. I mean, I can remember so many instances from that movie. It's just burned in my brain because not only were it so well done, but it was an amazing audience experience. It was a communal experience. And I mean, just when we had the anniversary of Avengers Endgame the other day, we were watching clips of people reacting, and it just brought tears to your eyes. It's a perfect mirroring of like entertainment and audience reaction. I think it's the future of franchise filmmaking. I think every franchise will strive to accomplish that. They should, if they're smart, going forward. Oh wow, I love that movie. It's a perfect film. I think it's a perfect movie. All right, so that's my ranking of all the Marvel movies, all 23 of them. Share your own thoughts down below. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.